cases, Nick. I'm on my way to the chamber. Nothing stopping it. You can believe it or you don't have to believe it. That's up to you, man. Put a big question mark on your film. Yeah, thanks a lot. I lost my fucking life because of it. Couldn't even get a fair trial. Couldn't even get a fair investigation or nothing. Couldn't even have my appeals right. You sabotaged my ass, society, and the cops, and the system. A raped woman got executed. It was used for books and movies and shit. Ladder climbs, re-election, everything else. I got a big finger in all your faces. Thanks a lot. You're an inhumane bunch of fucking living bastards and bitches, and you're gonna get your asses nuked in the end. And pretty soon it's coming. 2019, a rock's supposed to hit you anyhow. You're all gonna get nuked. I'm leaving. I'm glad. Thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass.
Hello, my pretties, and welcome back to Pretty Jazz Podcast. This is Serial Killers Unfiltered, Episode 5, Miss Aileen Wuornos. Stay tuned. Aileen Wuornos was born Aileen Carol Pittman on February 29, 1956 in Rochester, Michigan. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, was 14 years old when she married Aileen's father, 18-year-old Leo Pittman, in 1954. 2 months before Aileen was born, Diane filed for divorce. She gave birth to Aileen at the age of 16. Aileen's older brother Keith was born on March 14, 1955. Wuornos never met her father. In 1967, Leo Pittman was sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping and raping a 7-year-old girl. Pittman was also diagnosed with schizophrenia. He later committed suicide by hanging in prison on January 30th, 1969. In January of 1960, when Wuornos was almost 4 years old, Diane abandoned her children, leaving them with their maternal grandparents, Lori and Britta Wuornos, both alcoholics who legally did adopt Keith and Aileen on March 18th of 1960. By the age of 11, Wuornos had begun engaging in sexual activities in school for exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food. She also engaged in sexual activities with her brother. Wuornos said that her alcoholic grandfather had sexually assaulted and beaten her when she was a child. Before beating her, he would force her to strip out of her clothes. In 1970, at the age of 14, she had become pregnant, having been raped by a family friend. Wuornos gave birth to a boy at a home for unwed mothers on March 23, 1971, and the child was placed for adoption. A few months after her son was born, she dropped out of school, and around the same time, her grandmother died of liver failure. When Wuornos was 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house, and she began living in the woods near her old home and supporting herself through prostitution. On May 27, 1974, at just the age of 18, Wuornos was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado, for driving under the influence, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. She was later charged with failure to appear. In 1976, Wuornos hitchhiked to Florida, where she met 69-year-old yacht club president Louis Gracie-Fell. They married quickly, and the announcement of their nuptials was printed in the local newspaper Society pages. Wuornos continually involved herself in confrontations at their local bar and went to jail briefly for assault. She also hit Fell with his own cane, leading him to gain a restraining order against her just weeks within of their marriage. She returned to Michigan, where, on July 14, 1976, she was arrested at Bernie's Club in Massillona in the Atrium County and charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at the bartender's head. On July 17th, her brother Keith died of cancer. Wuornos received $10,000 from his life insurance. Wuornos and Fell annulled their marriage on July 21st after only 9 weeks. In August of 1976, Wuornos was given a fine of $105 for drunk driving. She used the money inherited from her brother to pay all the fines and spent the rest within 2 months buying luxuries including a new car, which she wrecked shortly afterwards. In 1978, at the age of 22, she attempted suicide by shooting herself in the stomach. Between the ages of 14 and 22, Wuornos attempted suicide 6 times. On May 20th, 1981, Wuornos was arrested in Edgewater, Florida, for armed robbery of a convenience store. Wuornos stole $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. She was sentenced to prison on May 4th, 1982, and she was released June 30th, 1983. On May 1st, 1984, Wuornos was arrested for attempting to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. On November 30th, 1985, she was named a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. On July 4th, 1990, Wuornos and Tyra Moore abandoned Victor Petumsai's car after they were involved in an accident. Rhonda Bailey, who witnessed the accident, provided police with a description of the 2 women, which later led to a media campaign to locate them. Police also found some of the victims' belongings in a pawn shop, where Wuornos' fingerprint had been found on the receipt at one of the pawn shops. That print also matched the print that was left in Simons' car. Wuornos had an extensive criminal record in Florida, and samples of her print were clearly in the database. On January 9, 1991, Wuornos was arrested at the Last Resort Biker Bar in Volusia County on the pretext of an outstanding warrant in the name of Lori Grody. Police located Moore the next day in Pittston, Pennsylvania. She agreed to elicit a confession from Wuornos in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Moore returned with the police to Florida, where she was put up in a motel. Under police guidance, she made numerous phone calls to Wuornos, pleading for her help in clearing her name. Just 3 days later, on January 16, 1991, Aileen Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed the men had tried to rape her and she killed them in self-defense. In 1991 of November, Wuornos was legally adopted by 44-year-old Aileen Craig, who saw her photo in the newspaper. On January 14, 1992, Wuornos went to trial for the murder of Richard Charles Mallory. Although previous convictions are normally inadmissible in criminal trials, under Florida's Williams Rule, the prosecution was allowed to introduce evidence related to her other crimes to show a pattern of illegal activity. On January 27, 1992, Wuornos was convicted of Mallory's murder with help from Moore's testimony. At her sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense tested that Wuornos was mentally unstable and diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder and an antisocial personality disorder. Just 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. On March 31st of 1992, Wuornos pleaded no contest to the murders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene Burris, and David Andrew Smears. saying that she wanted to get right with God. In her statement to the court, she said, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me, as I've told you, but these others did not. They only begun to start." On March 15, 1992, Wuornos was given 3 more death sentences. In June of 1992, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Kutzikan. In November of 1992, she received her 5th death sentence. In February of 1993, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Walter Gino Antonio and was sentenced to death again. No charges were brought against her for the murder of Peter Abramson, as his body was never found. But in all, Wuornos received 6 death sentences. Wuornos told several inconsistent stories about the killing. She claimed initially that all 7 men had either raped or attempted to rape her while she was working as a prostitute, but later recanted the claims of self-defense, citing robbery and a desire to leave no witnesses as the reason for murder. During an interview with filmmaker Nick Broomfield, when Wuornos thought the cameras were off, she told him that it was, in fact, self-defense, but she could not stand being on death row, where she had been for 10 years at that point, and wanted to die. Wuornos murdered 7 men within a period of 12 months. All the men were motorists between the ages of 40 and 65. Aileen Carol Wuornos was executed by lethal injection on October 9, 2002. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words: "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back, I'll be back." Aileen was the 2nd woman in Florida and the 10th in the United States to be executed. After her death, Wuornos' body was cremated. Wuornos' ashes were scattered beneath a tree in her native Michigan by a childhood friend, Don Bakkens. And that would be the story of Aileen Wuornos. Thanks so much for tuning in to Pretty Jazz Podcast, Serial Killers Unfiltered Edition. More and more to come. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Bye.